So in this lesson, in 3.1, solving two-step equations, we're going to use the inverse operation as we've been using. We're going to be adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, and our goal is to isolate the variable. So the first thing that we would like to do is to subtract the constant term from the side that has the variable with it to the first step to isolate the variable. So we're going to subtract 7 from this side. We're going to subtract 7 from this side. So all we have on this side is 3x is equal to negative 5 minus 7 is negative 12. Now we're still needing to isolate the x, so we are going to divide 3 by each side. So I'm going to divide 3 by this side. I'm going to divide 3 by this side. Negative 12 divided by 3 is going to be negative 4. So in your first example, using subtraction and division to solve, we subtracted 7 by each side, then we divided each side by 3. X is equal to negative 4. Now you need to go back, plug it in to see if it makes sense, to see if it works. So if I go down here and put 3 times negative 4 plus 7 is equal to negative 5. 3 times negative 4 is negative 12, plus 7 is equal to negative 5. So our answer is correct. So in our practice problems on number 1, the first thing we're going to do is either add or subtract to isolate the variable. So we're going to subtract 1 from each side. We have 4x is equal to 4. Divide each side by 4. X is equal to 1. You want to go back in and plug in x. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 plus 1 is equal to 5. X is equal to 1. Now, if you can do that one in your head, but I'm trying to get you in the habit of learning to check your answer instead of moving on. So let's do 2. We're going to subtract 8 each side. 3n is equal to 2 minus 8. Or if you still need to do this, minus or add the opposite. If it's 2 minus 8, you're going to add the opposite. Is going to be negative 6. Divide each side by 3. N is equal to negative 2. Again, put it back in. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. Negative 6 plus 8 is 2. And you can do that in your head also. All right, why don't you go ahead and do 3 and 4 on your own. Pause the video and come back and check your work. So check on number 3, we have negative 4 is equal to r. And, number 3, negative 4 is equal to r. And on number 4, negative 3 is equal to h. Now, in our next example 2, we're going to use addition and multiplication to solve. So again, we're going to check our answer when we're through. So the first thing we're going to do in this type of example, we're going to, again, add 3 to each side. So now we have left x over 2 is equal to 4. Since this is a division, we're going to do the inverse operation and multiply this side by 2. Multiply this side by 2. Again, as you've been taught earlier, previously, those cancel each other out. So x is equal to 8. You can go through here, plug in 8. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 4 minus 3 is 1. So be sure and check your answers before you move on. Okay, so let's move on. Now we're going to practice. Go ahead and do 5, 6, 7, and 8, and come back and check your work by using the same steps as we did in the first example. In the previous example. Now we have on number 5, b is equal to 36, c is equal to 48. So now I'm going to move the screen down. I'm going to work the others. So you'll notice on number 7 that we're going to do the inverse operation. We're going to move the constant first, so that means we're either going to add or subtract. So we added 1 to each side. which left us with 3 is equal to D over 5. Then we multiplied each side by 5 to do the inverse operation. 15 is equal to D. On number 8, we added 8 to each side. Then we had 12 is equal to F over 12. We multiplied each side by 12. You could probably do this in your head if you were to do 12 times 2 is 24. Then add the 0, it's 240. 240 is equal to F. So be sure and plug it in. 240 divided by 12 minus 8 will equal 12. Now, we are going to solve an equation using, solving an equation with negative coefficients. So again, as we've been doing previous examples, we're going to subtract 7 from each side, which leave us with negative 4y equals 12. May I strongly recommend that you make some type of note on this, because this is where a lot of students accidentally leave something out. Do not forget to bring down the negative for the negative 4y. So you put a smiley face, you put a star, you do something to tell yourself, I'm not going to be in that group of students. So now I'm going to divide each side by negative 4. So now my answer is going to be a negative 3. Now let's do 9 together. I want to subtract 12 from each side. Again, I'm going to remember to bring down my negative sign. Divide each side by negative 4. S is going to equal 6. I can go in there and mentally put 6 in. 4 times 6 is 24. So 12 minus 24 is negative 12. Go ahead and do numbers 10 and 11. Well, I fix this to make it look like an S instead of a 5. Okay, go ahead and do numbers 10 and 11. Come back and check your work. You'll notice on number 10, we took 6 away from each side. So now I'm left with negative 2m is equal to 2. Divided each side by negative 2 and got a negative 1. So I came up to the top, plugged in negative 1. 6 minus 2 times negative 1 is going to be equal to 6 plus 2, which is equal to 8. I went back and checked because I want those points. I go back, plug it in, and see if my answer is correct. So again, notice on 11, we subtracted 5 from each side because it's a positive 5. So we subtract 5. Our goal is to isolate the variable. So I subtracted 5 from each side. Negative 2 minus 5 is negative 7. Negative 7 is equal to negative n, but we do not want a negative variable, so we simply divide each side by negative 1, and 7 is equal to n. Once you plug it in, you'll see that your answer is correct. Last example. You are buying a drum set that costs $495. Bless your mother's heart. The music store lets you make a down payment. You can pay the remaining costs with no interest charge. You make a down payment of $150. How much is each monthly payment? Again, I need you to think about the type of problems that you've been doing in the previous slides. We have had a coefficient, either adding or subtracting a constant term, and then equaling something. So, meaning we're going to have something equaling something, a coefficient, and a constant term. So think about that, and we'll come back and set it up. A down payment is what you put down on something that you don't have all the money for, and you don't want to put it on credit. So if you had something that you wanted to pay for, but you didn't want anybody else to get it, you went in and said, I'm going to put a down payment here for you to hold it for me. So that's not going to change. That's going to be a constant number, the down payment is. So let's start off with your total cost is going to equal $495. So something on the left-hand side of the equals is going to have to equal 495. So 150 is our constant term. Then we're going to have something else over here on the left-hand side of the equals. Remember, we have been dealing with coefficients. So read the word problem again. See what else you're going to need on the left-hand side of the equation. An important part that was left out of the word problem is you can pay the remaining cost with no interest charge in 3 monthly payments. So since you can make it in 3 monthly payments, and they're wanting to know how much your monthly payment would be, what should we put here? Well, plus 3x, because you put down $150 plus 3 times x, however much you're going to pay each month. Your total cost is going to be $495. So the information that I added is what you needed. You needed to know how many months you were going to take to pay it. So $150 is our constant because it was not going to change. That's how much you put down. 3 months is how long you were going to take to pay it. They wanted to know how much each monthly payment was going to be. So we used our two-step equations to determine a monthly payment of $115, and the drum set is yours.